What if I told you that a Russian farmer who believes God created the world in 6 days understands reality more deeply than a Harvard PhD with 3 degrees in evolutionary biology? Sounds crazy, right? Anti-science? Superstitious? But this isn't the ranting of some religious fanatic. This is the view of Leo Tolstoy, one of the greatest minds in human history. The author of War and Peace and Anna Karenina, a genius recognized worldwide. And in 1910, just months before his death, he wrote a letter that, if true, would completely change how you see everything you think you know. Because this isn't just the old debate between religion and science. This is about the most dangerous thing in our information age. Confusing having data with actually understanding. About why, in an era where we can Google anything, we're becoming more ignorant? And why the answer to this problem lies in advice from a poor farmer who believed God created the world in a week. Before you dismiss this, let me tell you about the conversation that completely changed how Tolstoy viewed knowledge. A meeting with a doctor, a simple question about life's meaning, and a single word that made Tolstoy, a man who had dialogued with the world's greatest philosophers, stand up and end the conversation. What was that word? And why was it so important that it could determine the future of how we think? In an age where AI can create perfect fake news, when algorithms know you better than you know yourself, when experts say everything but no one really understands what's happening, maybe it's time we learned from those modern society considers backward. Because what Tolstoy discovered might not just change how you learn, but save you from becoming a victim of your own knowledge. To understand why this advice matters so much, you need to know who Tolstoy was. Born in 1828 into a wealthy Russian aristocratic family, Tolstoy wasn't some illiterate peasant believing in fairy tales. He was educated by the finest tutors, exposed to the most advanced Western philosophy. Read Darwin when The Origin of Species was first published. Studied science, mathematics, history. He wasn't just a novelist. Tolstoy was a philosopher, an educational reformer, a school founder, a mind that constantly questioned everything. But at age 50, after finishing Anna Karenina, Tolstoy suddenly fell into a deep existential crisis. He began asking, why do I live? What's the meaning of all this success? Unlike others who turned to alcohol or money, Tolstoy turned to knowledge. He read everything: philosophy, science, religion, psychology. But here's the strange thing. The more he learned from smart books, the emptier he felt. Conversely, when talking to simple peasants around his estate, he found something more real. These people couldn't explain why they lived, but they lived with a peace that all of Tolstoy's knowledge couldn't provide. Now fast forward to 1910. Tolstoy was 82 years old. This was the most magical time in the history of science. Darwin had proven evolution. Industrialization was changing the world. Electricity, cars, airplanes had just been invented. Everyone believed science would solve all of humanity's problems. Scientists were worshipped like gods. Every question could be answered with the scientific method. The future would be a paradise of reason. And in that context, an old Russian man sat in his study, receiving hundreds of letters from around the world. People wanted to know his opinions on life, religion, and science. One of those letters came from Dr. Albert Shkarvin, a Slovak doctor, an intelligent, educated man who loved science. Shkarvin had written to Tolstoy many times. He respected Tolstoy as a teacher. But there was one thing Shkarvin didn't understand. Why would Tolstoy, such an intelligent person, say that simple peasants could understand truth more deeply than scientists? And on the 9th of January, 1910, just 10 months before his death, Tolstoy wrote back. What he wrote in that letter didn't just answer Shkarvin, but accurately predicted exactly what's happening to us today. But before he wrote that letter, there was a meeting that completely changed how Tolstoy viewed knowledge. A conversation whose outcome will make you rethink everything you think you know. Picture this. A cold winter day at Tolstoy's Yasnaya Polyana estate. In the study sat two people. 82-year-old Tolstoy, white-bearded, sharp-eyed, and a doctor full of scientific enthusiasm. The doctor had traveled far to ask Tolstoy, "Sir, what is the true meaning of life?" Tolstoy slowly replied, "Life's meaning can only be found through the desire to achieve welfare for the soul, the non-material part within us." The doctor nodded but seemed unsatisfied. He expected a more scientific answer. "Sir, these things are too subjective. I need an objective definition of life's meaning," the doctor said. Tolstoy was used to these words: objective, scientific, provable. To explain, the doctor continued, "Modern science shows that life can be understood through the process of evolution." Hearing that word, Tolstoy stopped. He apologized and said he couldn't continue the conversation. The meeting ended. The doctor left confused, not understanding why the single word evolution made Tolstoy react that way. Tolstoy wasn't anti-science, but he realized something we still don't understand today. The word evolution had become something more dangerous than a scientific theory. It had become a magic word, a way to stop thinking instead of encouraging thought. Just like today we say AI, algorithm, data, as if these words explain everything when they actually explain nothing. Think about the times you've heard someone say, "We need to make decisions based on data," and everyone nods, as if that means something profound. Or, "Research shows," without asking what research, by whom, with what methodology. Or "Science has proven," to end all debate, as if science were an omnipotent God instead of a method of inquiry with limitations. Tolstoy saw this 114 years ago. He realized that when we turn knowledge into religion, we're no longer wise. The problem isn't whether evolution is right or wrong. The problem is when evolution becomes the answer to every question about life's meaning. Just like today, when we say the algorithm decides to explain why we see this news, buy that product, love this person, we're giving up our ability to think independently in exchange for explanations that sound smart. And this led Tolstoy to write to Shkarvan one of the most profound letters about the nature of human knowledge. In it, he explained why the answer "God created the world in 6 days" was smarter than everything modern science could say about the origin of the universe. Sounds crazy? Let me show you why this might be the most important discovery about how humans understand. In his letter to Shkarvan, Tolstoy posed the oldest question: where did it all begin? He wrote, "The world and humans are beings in time. We cannot imagine anything outside of time. Try to imagine before time existed or after time ends. Your brain can't do it, can it?" That's exactly the problem. The question about the beginning and end of time is the wrong question. How does religion answer? God created the world in 6 days. Sounds absurd, Adam, Eve, the apple like fairy tales. But Tolstoy said, look deeper. This answer contains the concept of God, an entity outside human understanding and time. Religion is illogical about details, but correct about essence. Acknowledging the non-temporal source and saying, I cannot know completely. What about science? Big Bang, expanding universe, dark matter. What was before the Big Bang? Multiverse. Before that? String theory. Each answer just pushes the question back one step. Worse, science claims it can answer. That humans can understand the infinite realm. Tolstoy. Only the scientific superstitious person doesn't admit that the origin of matter and their relationships cannot be determined. The religious person, I don't know and admit I cannot know. The scientifically superstitious, I know and will know what I don't yet know. True wisdom isn't having all the answers, but knowing which questions can't be answered. Religion teaches about the limits of human knowledge. Scientism nurtures the illusion of understanding everything. The trap. Confusing partial knowledge with complete understanding. Mistaking describing process with explaining cause. Evolution explains how species change, but doesn't explain why there's life, consciousness, why there's anything instead of nothing. This is why when we're obsessed with AI and data today, we make the same mistake Tolstoy warned about 114 years ago. Tolstoy continued, "The first person knows there are things that cannot be known. The second is certain. Nothing is unknowable." The religious person, even with crude religion, has a precious quality, acknowledging mystery. There's something beyond human understanding, and that's okay. The scientifically superstitious, their head is full of wrong things they consider truth. No room left to receive truth. Like pouring water into a cup that's already full. Tolstoy remembered Socrates. The important thing is not to think you know what cannot be known, but to know that you don't know. 2,500 years ago, Socrates understood what we in the Google age still haven't learned. The difference between the wise and the foolish isn't the amount of information, but the attitude toward what we don't know. The wise: I know that I don't know. The foolish: I know everything I need to know. The greatest paradox of our age: more information than ever, but less wisdom. Google anything in 0.3 seconds, but can't distinguish information from understanding. AI writes essays on any topic but is confident when wrong, and we don't notice. Scientific research proves everything and its opposite. We don't know what's true. Compare. A religious farmer can't explain how seeds sprout but knows he doesn't know, lives in harmony with mystery. An agricultural scientist explains sprouting at the molecular level, but ask, why is there life? And says, evolution, as if that explains anything. Tolstoy: the first type, gradually removing the shell of superstition, will progress toward truth. The second cannot receive it because their head is already full of wrong things considered truth. The door of wisdom only opens for those willing to admit they don't know. We see this constantly. Experts confidently predict economics, politics, weather, consistently wrong. Doctors say masks aren't needed, then mandatory, then not needed again each time with absolute confidence. Tech leaders promise AI will solve every problem but can't explain how AI works, why it's often wrong. People who admit I don't understand actually have the capacity to truly learn. This is why Tolstoy said religious people, even crude ones, are still closer to truth than the scientifically superstitious. In an age bombarded with contradictory information, maybe we need not more data, but the humility to admit what we truly don't know. Today, Tolstoy's scientific superstition has become an epidemic. Boardrooms make data-driven decisions. Everyone nods, but no one asks. What data? From where? What methodology? Universities. Research shows. Students take notes. But whose research? How many subjects? Who funded it? Social media. Science has proven to end debates, as if science were an omnipotent God instead of a method full of limitations. Medicine. Evidence-based. Sounds scientific. But does that evidence apply to your specific case? If Tolstoy warned about evolution, today we have an entire arsenal of magic words. AI will solve the problem. Is AI actually intelligent or just a complex pattern processing machine we don't understand? The algorithm decides. Which algorithm? Who wrote it? What biases? What purpose? We need to optimize. Optimize what? For whom? By what criteria? These words become ways to stop thinking instead of encouraging thought. The problem Tolstoy couldn't imagine. AI is confident when wrong. ChatGPT answers with absolute confidence. How do we know it's right? Students use AI to write essays. Do they understand what they wrote? Doctors use AI for diagnosis. When AI is wrong, Who's responsible? We're creating a generation that can access all information but can't think independently. Tolstoy's test for scientific superstition. Question 1. Do I claim to know things that cannot be known? Example. Certain about next year's stock market. Believing AI will completely replace humans? Question 2. Do I use scientific terminology to avoid thinking? Saying data-driven without explanation? Research indicates without knowing which research? Question 3. Do I confuse partial knowledge with complete understanding? Reading a climate article and thinking you understand everything? Watching YouTube psychology and feeling you can analyze others? Answer yes to any question. Don't worry. We all do. Remember experts who once said, airplanes couldn't fly, internet was just a toy, smartphones would never be popular. Today's experts are equally confident about AI, economics, society, and might be equally wrong. The difference: wise people are willing to say, I might be wrong. Escape the trap? Have the wisdom of the peasants Tolstoy admired? The answer: learn to live with mystery. And that's harder than you think. So why did peasants have an advantage? Not because their religion was right or wrong, but because their lives taught them about living with things they couldn't control. Weather, crops, natural disasters. They planted seeds without knowing for certain what they'd harvest. They prayed for rain but prepared for drought. Religion taught them there were things greater than human understanding, and that wasn't scary. While we panic when Wi-Fi goes down for 5 minutes, they were comfortable not knowing many things. What can we learn from the religious approach? First, acknowledge limits. There are things beyond my understanding, and that's normal. Second, embrace mystery. Not everything needs explanation. Some questions are more important than answers. Third, seek wisdom about how to live, not just knowledge about the world. How to live well is more important than how does the universe work. Fourth, practice humility. I might be wrong. You might teach me something. But real science, not scientism, also has valuable lessons. Question assumptions. Why do I believe this? What evidence supports it? What evidence contradicts it? Gather evidence, but no evidence has limits. One study isn't absolute truth. Stay open. Be ready to change your mind with new information. That's a sign of intelligence, not weakness. Trust the method, but be humble about conclusions. This is what I observed, instead of, this is absolute truth. Tolstoy wasn't telling us to abandon science and become farmers. He wanted us to integrate both. Use scientific methods to understand the world, but with religion's humility about what we cannot know. Not anti-science, not anti-religion, but pro-wisdom, pro-humility, pro-mystery. Use labels and terminology to enhance thinking, not replace thinking. Create communities where people can share knowledge without claiming to have all the answers. Live comfortably with not knowing, but still curious and learning. But how do we practice this in daily life? How do we escape the trap that both the doctor in the story and we might fall into? Tolstoy identified the problem. Now it's time to find the solution. Week 1. Recognize your magic words. What words do you use to end thinking instead of encouraging it? Work. Saying best practices, optimize, data-driven, without specific explanation. Life. Saying common sense, obvious, everyone knows to avoid explaining. Social media. Sharing science proves without reading carefully. Challenge. About to say these words, stop and ask, what do I really mean? Am I avoiding thinking? Week 2. Daily Socratic questions. Each evening ask, what did I claim to know today that I actually don't know? Replace I know with I think. In my understanding. It seems like, before sharing online, pause 30 seconds and ask, how do I know this? Is the source reliable? Do I really understand? Especially, practice saying, I'm not sure, when you're really not sure. That's not weakness, but courage. Week 3. Learn to live with unanswerable questions. When encountering something confusing, don't rush to find explanations. Sit with that question. Feel the mystery. Shift from, what's the answer, to, what's the right question? From, know more, to, understand deeper? Learn from simple people, street vendors, laborers, elderly folks. They teach things PhDs can't. Instead of trying to know everything, choose a few things to truly understand deeply. Quality over quantity. Tolstoy's final challenge. Find your strongest belief. Something you're 100% certain about regarding politics, health, technology, people. Spend 30 minutes this week researching the best arguments against that belief. Not to torture yourself or doubt everything, but to practice intellectual courage. If the belief survives honest scrutiny, you can believe it with real confidence. If not, you learn something valuable about the difference between belief and truth. That's what Tolstoy wanted us to learn. Not the fake certainty of the scientifically superstitious, nor crude superstition, but the intellectual humility of those who know the difference between what can be known and what cannot be known. In a world where everyone is confident when ignorant, being humble when intelligent has become a revolutionary act. Now back to the original question. Who will you be? The confident doctor in Tolstoy's room, or the humble peasant in the field? It's not about education or profession. A professor can have peasant wisdom. A farmer can suffer from scientific superstition. This is about intellectual character, how you approach truth, whether you have the courage to admit what you don't know. Tolstoy wasn't just criticizing. He was offering an invitation. Embrace mystery. Some things cannot be known, and that's not scary. Practice humility. You might be wrong. Others might teach you. Seek wisdom over information. Learning to live well matters more than knowing many facts. Think carefully. Don't let labels and terminology replace real thinking. Final challenge. Find something you're absolutely certain about, and spend this week asking, how do I really know this? Not to create doubt, but to create thoughtfulness. Not to destroy beliefs, but to strengthen real understanding. Not to stop learning, but to start truly knowing. If Tolstoy is right, you'll make better decisions based on wisdom, not just data. Deeper relationships built on humility, not expertise. A richer life full of mystery and wonder instead of emptiness with fake answers. A wiser society valuing understanding over information, wisdom over data, good questions over quick answers. In a world where everyone is confident when ignorant, have the courage to be humble when intelligent. That's Tolstoy's legacy. Not answers to everything, but the wisdom to know which questions shouldn't be answered. What will you choose?